Red light, green light, red light, green light, red light, green light, red light, green light, red light.
Well, folks of the internet, as we are always having fun, you know, it's the Scottish period and I like to have that fun. But welcome, of course, to another episode of the Soul Sessions, of course, with your host, as always, myself, Soul. But with me today, well, this man, he's probably one of the greatest that ever lived, as they say. You know, he's a former 3-time Impact World Champion, former 6-time X Division Champion, 2-time Ring of Honor World Champion, and many more accolades that will make my tongue roll off the bloody cheek. Austin Aries, welcome, my friend.
What's up, Soul? How are you, man?
I'm very well, mate. I'm very well. But of course, Austin, you know, what I do with every guest, you know, every guest has a story. Every story has a beginning. Austin, how did your story begin as a wrestling fan?
Oh, boy. So I'm going to go back to 1982. And what I would have been about 4 years old. And, yeah, I saw the AWA on the television. I grew up in Wisconsin, which was, you know, the AWA was kind of a Midwest territory. And up until that point, I was big into the, you know, G.I. Joe and the Army. A lot of my family had served in the military, so I had a lot of their old military books and all the G.I. Joe toys. And then, then I just saw pro wrestling. It was probably a Saturday or a Sunday morning, and it just captivated me. It grabbed my attention, and you know, from there on out, everything was about wrestling. You know, I got all the AWA Remco figures from that mid 80s, and you know, started my own little promotion, the CWA, the Classic Wrestling Association. And you know, I grew up an athlete, so I was into sports and I was into pro wrestling, and you know, just really followed it, you know, really since that time. And you know, so I grew up really watching the Crockett era, the NWA Crockett era wrestling. That'll always be wrestling to me. The Four Horsemen and Dusty and the Russians and the Rock and Roll Express and the Midnight Express and Magnum TA. And so, you know, I think for all of us as fans, you know, whenever we fell in love with it or what we grew up watching will always be what we think wrestling is. And obviously the product has changed a lot since the Crockett days. But for me, like if I go watch wrestling now, that's the stuff I want to go watch. I want to go relive those memories and go back now and watch some of that stuff with a more educated eye now that I've been doing it myself for, you know, 25 years.
Hey, awesome. 100% there, mate. You know, I always love and going to research and just seeing how the times were and how, you know, that era of wrestling is cemented within, you know, the digital media landscape that we have now. But I'm always fascinated because, you know, for Scottish wrestling, we didn't really have a scene until 2004 with just how the times built. So I'm really fascinated, you know, how was, you know, professional wrestling really perceived back in the day of obviously, you know, these territories and this moment of like, you know, it's a family event, you go and see the show. So how integral do you think wrestling is to the old American ways of like, you know, the past?
I mean, I've even been told stories that like my great grandmother, you know, used to sit in front of the TV and just curse it out, you know, because you know, we're probably talking in the, you know, 50s or the 60s. And, you know, at that point, a lot of people still felt pro wrestling was legitimate. So there was real emotion, you know. So I think it's always kind of been a fabric of Americana. I think the demographics of who have watched it has changed over the decades.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, you know, I think it's always kind of, you know, going back now, you know, what we're talking, you know, 80 years or more, you know, that it's been a head of influence. And yeah, I remember my dad taking me to an AWA event. I was probably 5 or 6. And I think I saw Hulk Hogan versus Blackjack Lanza and Bobby Heenan in a cage, you know. So yeah, you know, and the weird thing is I don't remember the time where I was like, oh, wrestling's not real. Mm-hmm. It's just this weird thing. Like, I think just because I grew up watching it, at some point I just kind of understood what it was. But it wasn't like some, like, you know, when you realize Santa Claus isn't real. I never had that moment with wrestling. It just kind of happened, you know? So, but it's definitely changed now. Like, it's, you know, you can't go back and bottle that legitimate emotion that my great grandmother had watching it, you know, really, really being angry at the TV, because now we're so smart to it, you know.
We're smart to a negative degree sometimes. Some people think they're way too
Well,
smart for some things.
Or the problem is you're not as smart as you think you are, and when that gets revealed, then you get angry at the person who worked you, you know. Yeah.
100% there, brother, indeed. Now, of course, as well, we've seen a lot of these legendary tales from the past be reintegrated into society through documentaries and films, like obviously The Iron Claw with the Von Erichs, and I know there's an NWA women's wrestler film coming out, Queen of the Ring.
Okay.
For yourself, Austin, is there any particular wrestlers or stories from the past you would love to see get a modern treatment in film?
Good question. Man, that's a really good question. I mean, I think that even just something that would kind of, and I don't know if it'd be possible, but to show us the evolution of pro wrestling behind the scenes.
Yeah.
You know, I was trained in part by Eddie Sharkey, who trained the Road Warriors, and so I mean, I got a very old school approach to training, and the stories Eddie would tell me about him and Harley Race and getting in these bar fights, and you know, Eddie going to put his thumb in the guy's eye, and he said, Harley beat, all I got was socket, Harley beat me to it, you know. But I think it's really interesting, like for me, that's kind of the interesting part, is how it's changed being a pro wrestler from say the 50s, the 60s into the 80s to the 2000s to now, right? And so I think that would be kind of interesting in itself, and capture that, you know, and the main players from all those different time periods, and what it took to be a pro wrestler in the 70s or the 80s is way different than what it takes to be a pro wrestler now in 2025. And the skill set has completely changed as well, you know, and the expectations have changed.
Yeah, absolutely. The expectations will always evolve when, you know, new integrations of method are in place, you know, when new movesets are in place, or obviously the fans' demands increase.
Sure.
And, you know, with the Scottish wrestling scene now is like, you could go into one city and there's maybe 2 training schools, and there's such amazing availability of it. But obviously for yourself, Austin, back in the day, what was it like entering wrestling training? Was it quite far and barren? Did you have to travel far to actually get to schools? And what was it like exploring the American indie scene at that time?
Yeah, you know, it's crazy because this was pre-internet, really, pre-social media. You know, when I went off to college, in 97. You know, we still had a computer lab that we had to go to if we wanted to access online. People didn't have laptops, much less their phone, that just gave them this access. So part of that for me was, you know, I never even thought about how you would become a pro wrestler, because there wasn't somewhere I could just Google it or look it up. You had to kind of know someone who knew someone. You had to somehow find a wrestler who knew a wrestler, or somebody who knew a place. It wasn't being advertised. It wasn't in the phone book, you know, it wasn't in the yellow pages, and you couldn't just access the information. So for me, you know, my goal was always to be a professional baseball player. I was pretty good at baseball, and I went off to college to play baseball. But the idea of being a pro wrestler just never crossed my mind, because I wouldn't have even known how to go about it. So for me, when I got a call from a childhood friend, he told me he was training up in Minneapolis to be a pro wrestler. And he said the name Eddie Sharkey. And because I was a wrestling nerd and I, you know, read all the magazines, I knew who Eddie Sharkey was. I knew the guys that he had trained. So kind of in disbelief, I was like, well, I'm not going to say I don't believe you, buddy, but I got to come check this out for myself, because I don't believe you. It's like, what? There's like a wrestling school. He just trains. Like, yeah, there's a school up here. It's, you know, it's just in this guy's garage, and there's a small ring. And so yeah, I drove up a couple weeks later and I checked it out, and like, he wasn't lying. Like, here was this little 16-foot ring in this garage, and like, guys are training, and I was just blown away. Like, I couldn't, like, oh my God, this is a thing. And so I begged Eddie's partner, Terry, you know, please, can I get in the ring? And he's like, no, it's $3,000 and you have to sign a waiver. And it's like, man, I got like $500 to my name. You know, I'm just a college dropout, you know, trying to figure it out. And And so I asked if he'd make a deal with me, and he said, well, let me think about it. And like an hour later, he came up and said, so you really want to do this? I was like, oh, Terry, more than anything in the world. Screw right, you got yourself a deal. And the deal was I gave him half of the $500 I had. I gave him $250, and I'd pay him every week until it was paid off. And my buddy let me move up on his couch. And again, there was no GoFundMe. There was none of these, these other tools that we have now. And I moved up on my buddy's couch like a week later, and I started giving plasma twice a week to make like, $60-80 extra. I went and worked temp jobs for $7.50 an hour, getting up at 5 a.m., digging ditches and doing concrete work. And none of it felt like work, because at 5 o'clock every, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, man, I got to go train to be a pro wrestler, and it was awesome. And so, a lot of people have said, man, like, look at all the work you put in, and so proud of everything. It's like, man, never felt like work. Like, I had this opportunity to like chase a dream and do something that I loved. So if I had to go wait tables on Monday, afternoon, so I could go train Monday evening, like, that's no big deal,
Hey, fucking dedication, mate. That's what 100% it is there. And it shows the passion for it.
Yeah.
Right. Got a fair play for you on that. Obviously, the American scene has evolved to great heights now, but obviously back then in the 2000s and 2001s, it was obviously not a lot. Obviously, at that time period, WWF was still the big king. You had ECW and WWE in their formats, but obviously would shut down close to the time. For yourself, Austin, what was just the wrestling landscape like mid 2000s?
Well, I think obviously when WWE bought all their competition, it created a void, and a vacuum. And so that's when we saw, I think, and this kind of coupled with the internet becoming popular, so that now wrestling fans from all different areas of the world could communicate. And so it boomed the independent scene, which I don't know if before that it had as much traction, because you couldn't communicate, so what you got into is you have only one big show in town. Now there's this void that needs to be filled. And then also you have this phenomenon of tape traders, right? Now, and because of the internet, we can be in communication with other people around the world. Like when I growing up, I knew like 3 people who liked pro wrestling, like it wasn't something you advertised, especially if you wanted to get a girlfriend, like it wasn't something you told anybody about. And you kind of figured out a few guys that, in your town that like pro wrestling. But now with the internet, and it changed the game. Now you had tape trading, and, so people that love Japan style could now I could watch stuff from Japan that how would I ever have seen stuff from Japan before that? Right. Or independent promotions, or these, local guys. And so it became a thing. And then that's really where Ring of Honor, was born from, right? It was, hey, we're a tape trading company. RF Video was a tape trading company, and they realized, well, geez, why don't we just make our own content? We're really popular in trading everyone else's promotions. Why don't we create our own, and we can then do that with our own product? And so that was really where the concept, came from. And it just was this perfect storm of, you have a bunch of young, hungry, independent, wrestlers who don't have a lot of options of where to go make good money. And so, here's a company that kind of tried to pluck the best talent from all over and put them together, and a bunch of magic happened.
100%. There truly is magic that's still felt to this day. But obviously, before Ring of Honor would really get up and running, you would explore other opportunities. I know you had a dark match at WWE at Velocity against Mortis back in the 2000s.
Yeah, that just got posted, huh?
Yeah, the archives, they like to post around and see what's going on. Talk about that moment of having a dark match against Mortis.
Well, like I had, I was probably about 4 years now, like, applying my craft and learning and starting to branch out, because again, branching out was a little more organic, because again, social media wasn't a thing. So you couldn't direct people to your YouTube page or to your Instagram to watch matches. It was a lot of networking through going, meeting people, working a new promotion, and then hoping a connection led to the next booking at a new place, and then hopefully you caught some eyes there. And so it took a little longer. The networking and the branching out took a little longer because we didn't have the internet to use, right? So at this point, I was 4 years in, and felt like I was one of the better guys in my scene, but I wasn't being pushed to get better, right? Because I was working the same guys primarily most of the bookings. So myself and Sean Davari drove down to, I think, Tennessee to do a Dr. Tom Pritchard camp. And at the time, Dr. Tom was heading up the talent relations for WWE. So here was a good opportunity to be seen by someone within WWE and learn in the process. So it was like a 14-hour drive or something. We drove down there and we did the camp, and we got caught in a hurricane. So we ended up stuck in this cafe with them for, 4 or 5 extra hours, which worked in our favor because we got to actually chat with them. And so basically out of that experience, we got some dark matches or just, extra talent. We got called in to be extra talent next time they were in the Midwest area. And at that time, you didn't know if you were going to be doing anything or not. You just showed up, and you hope to maybe train in the ring a little bit, or maybe you got an extra spot or a dark match. And yeah, so like that was happening around the same time that I was getting an opportunity with Ring of Honor. That was coming off the heels of doing the Super 8 tournament up in the Northeast, which at the time was kind of like the big indie wrestling tournament that was an opportunity for guys that were more local to get put on a more national stage, right? They were taking, 8 of the best independent talents from around the country and putting them in a tournament. And so these things kind of all happened in succession and kind of put my name on the radar to some eyes that can make some things happen. And then, yeah, out of that, I got the dark match with Mortis, which I don't know if he ever wrestled again as Mortis. My understanding at the time, at least, was, hey, they want to see me in this gimmick and they want to see if they like it. So instead of wrestling as Canyon that night, he was wrestling as Mortis. And yeah, so I just went out there to just do my part, which was to, help make him look good, basically.
Just shows, opportunities can come out of nowhere. A snowstorm giving you an opportunity on the WWE platform. Hey. Yeah,
but it's, they say it's like out of nowhere, but what, it's like 4 years of grinding before you get there. So, I mean, even guys, we take an example now that have just happened, like a guy like Joe Hendry, and it's like, oh, this guy's an overnight sensation. It's like, well, no, this guy's been grinding for like a decade, And so you never know when it's going to hit. You never know what the thing's going to be or when the opportunity is going to open itself up. But you got to put all the work in before that happens. For some people, it never happens, right? They might go their whole career and never get that break. Some people get it right off the jump, right? Life's not fair, as they say. But yeah, for me, it was 4 years of putting the work in and getting better, getting my body, looking better, making more connections, and then you get the opportunity,
100%. Like Joe's been doing ICW since like mid 2010s. His songs he's been doing for a long time as well, and just that getting that public exposure is kind of insane. Everyone's like, oh, this is a new thing. I love this. Like, no, he's been doing this since like 2014 with like Jeff Jarrett and Lionheart. And it's like, just shows,
it's the grind. It's kind of like they say it's like when you plant, when you plant something, by the time it sprouts through the soil, it already had to lay the roots. There's a whole foundation underneath you don't see. You only see it when it pops through, but there was a lot going on before that ever happens.
Yeah, 100% there. Now, of course, Ring of Honor, legendary free words, legendary promotion within the American scene. I love to obviously talk about that early time of Ring of Honor when it was building up and continue on with the stars of like yourself, Samoa Joe, CM Punk, of just that integral part of, American wrestling culture with, the big exports we were bringing in and just bringing in the whole environment of American wrestling. Just your thoughts on, those early days of Ring of Honor and its building within the wrestling zeitgeist.
Well, I think if you watch, there was definitely like an influence of the Japanese, like Super Junior style, going back and you talk about guys like, Dynamite Kid and Tiger Mask and things like, or even guys, the Eddie Guerreros and the Chris Benoits and, the quote unquote work rate, right? Less of the sports entertainment and more of the pro wrestling aspect of it. And so I just think it was, for me, an opportunity to now get in the ring with a bunch of guys that were further along than I was and that were better than I was, to help see how good I could become. Like, can I hang with these guys? Can I go and do 75 minutes with Bryan Danielson? Can I make it believable to beat a guy like Samoa Joe? Like, can I make the people believe that I can, topple this guy that's been so dominant? So for me, it was just, you get this collection of guys from all over the country and all over the world who in their area were the best guys around. And now you put them all together and go, okay, let the cream rise to the top, and we're all pushing each other. And we all, I think there was a sense of pride in what we were doing, to say, hey, like, we're gonna be the best pro wrestling shows every month, and so and be a real alternative that really wasn't being offered anywhere else at that time, because again, WWE had bought everything. So there was only one flavor of pro wrestling. So here was an opportunity for us, and I think we look back at it now, it's like we were kind of like ECW after ECW was no longer, I think that spirit of it, the fan base being so passionate about the product, feeling like we were the underdogs, feeling like, but knowing that we could hang our hat on a style that nobody else could present like we could present it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a fascinating style, from like stuff, the pure championship of what Nigel did with that belt, and obviously the hard-hitting style. And you've been quite accomplished in Ring of Honor. And I obviously have to talk about you dethroning Samoa Joe in his longest reign of Ring of Honor champion. Just reflecting back to that night and the moment of obviously dethroning Joe, it's available on the Honor Club. People can rewatch it back. It was recently, it's like 20 years last year as well. Yeah. That moment happened.
Yeah. I was hoping to do me and Joe at Final Battle this last year for the 20-year anniversary, but maybe we'll do the 25 or something. Who knows?
Hey, we'll get Tony Khan on the phone for that 100%. Yeah. But
you got his number. You let me know. So
I'll do my best. But obviously, reflecting back to that night, I just want to know your thoughts and emotion, obviously, of becoming Ring of Honor World Champion and obviously dethroning Joe's long historic reign.
I mean, I took it very seriously, right? Like the honor of being chosen to be that guy. And it was important for me that Joe respected me to be that guy. So I actually flew out to California where he lived and stayed with him for like a week leading up to the show. And we didn't really talk about wrestling. I wanted him to get to know me and make sure that he was cool with doing that favor for me, because I knew how much work he put in to making that title mean something. And I wanted to, and obviously Joe's a pro, so he was going to do whatever was being asked of him. But it was important for him to know the kind of guy I was, and that I appreciated, and I took that honor seriously, and I was going to do the best I could with it, with whatever was given to me. Yeah, I mean, it's just, listen, it could have been a dozen different guys that were qualified, that were skilled, that could have been that person. And so for me, it really just thrust my name on the map and really just cemented me as a guy. That then the opportunity is now you got to prove yourself, right? Now you have the magnifying glass on you. So now what are you going to do with it? And, I just tried to do something different, because I knew I wasn't going to have the long dominant reign of Joe, because I'm a completely different wrestler. So to add what I could to it was I tried to take it as many places internationally as I could during my title reign, to really truly make it a world championship, right? So now this has been defended in 6, 7, 8 countries, and I was able to accomplish that with the time I had the title.
You absolutely 100% accomplished that. And also, even when you lost the title, you accomplished something else of leading it to one of the biggest stories within Ring of Honor history, obviously the Summer of Punk storyline. when you look back on that, what was the environment and the planning around obviously that title change and going into Punk's reign of obviously the Summer of Punk?
I mean, I was just, hey, I just went out and did my job, which was to put on a great match, and obviously, we know what the outcome was. Anything beyond that, I wasn't in those conversations. I didn't know, and honestly, I don't think I really cared, right? Because I was, at that point in my career, I was just so I'm contrary to what a lot of people might think, I've never really been political. I've never really worried about the politics or my spot or winning or losing. I always, especially at that point in my career, I just hung my hat on, if I go out there and I deliver in the ring, everything else takes care of itself. So I was just always hyper focused on that, right? Like, tell me what you need from me, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do it as good as anybody can do it in this industry. Mm-hmm. I'm terrible playing the game behind the curtain. That's not where I ever made my money, and honestly, if I would have been better at that, I probably would have made a lot more money. I just always said, hey, I'm going to go out there and put on the best match I can. Like, and me at my best is going to be better than 90% of the people that are going. And that's just what I believe. So I didn't worry about all the other stuff. I will say, like, some of my proudest moments in the industry is me losing titles. And I think that's awesome, because I think a lot of people have this perception that, Austin Aries, cares about winning, or like, again, like the John Morrison, he didn't want to lose the title. It's like, I actually suggested losing the title to John. Like, that was like originally they told me they were going to keep the title on me. I said, why? She put the title on this guy. So to be the guy that's part of some of these memorable moments in loss, I have pride in that, because one thing I was always taught when I started training was, if you can make your opponent look good, you'll always have a spot, right? It's easy to make yourself look good, but to go out there and elevate someone else and to be the dance partner that makes them look good is even more valuable, because not everybody can do that. Not everyone can do that. So the fact that my name is kind of etched in there with some very memorable title switches where I lost, I think that's pretty cool, actually cooler than any of my accolades, like, of winning it. Like, I'm more proud of my title losses than I am my title wins in a weird way.
I think that's a fair point. With the loss, it builds upon to the next thing, because without the loss, you don't get the build for the next. And that's quite fair accomplishments to have on your career with those starting points. Now, obviously, Ring of Honor as well, I know you have the tag team of Generation Next with Roddy Strong. Roddy's an excellent worker and great thing. And it just speaks to the caliber of great names within Ring of Honor we spoke of. So, and I want to know, Austin, obviously with the likes of Nigel McGuinness, Joe, Punk, and how these guys are obviously still influencing wrestling today, was it that you look back on Ring of Honor's legacy?
I mean, I think it speaks for itself, right? It's the Ring of Honor style is literally what pro wrestling has become now. I mean, it's influenced the entire style of what you see on TV for all the companies. When we were doing that style at the time, I know that the bigger companies would look at that and they would kind of thumb their nose at it. These guys aren't selling. They don't know how to tell a story. They're doing too much stuff, too many kickouts. And now that is literally what all wrestling has become, to a point to where, like, I don't even enjoy, like, I'm like, but it literally is, right? And then again, if you just list the names, anyone who's gone on to do anything of substance in the industry all came through there. Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Bryan Danielson, Samoa Joe, CM Punk. I mean, it's, name someone who hasn't come through that system. That, I mean, it's basically it is the landscape of pro wrestling. So, I mean, the legacy speaks for itself, right?
Truly, you just have to look, and it truly does just speak for itself. It's
I think too, we're getting to that time now that, there was a point where people who didn't grow up with ECW got to go back and watch it and go, oh wow, this was like really cool, or this was cutting edge. Oh, this is actually some really bad wrestling. Some of it, right? But you couldn't deny the emotion and the passion that the wrestlers had and the fans had for the product. That was undeniable, no matter what you think of the product itself, right? And now people are going to go back who didn't experience it. It's one of those things where it's like I see a lot of commentators and, man, you know, some guy who's in his 20s right now, you know, 25, he's not going to know what it was like to be there banging that guardrail in the Hammerstein Ballroom or in the Field House in Chicago, and the electricity that was in the air, right? And it's just this one of these moments in time that, like, you don't know if it's going to be recaptured or when it's going to be recaptured. So once ECW was done, everyone was like, you're never going to recapture that, right? You're never going to feel that same feeling about pro wrestling. And then Ring of Honor did it. And now we're looking back, oh man, we're never going to recapture that feeling. Something will come along and do it. And it might not be in the next 5 years or 10 years, but it was different. And the passion that was being on display from in the ring to the crowd and the electricity in the air, you know, it's hard to describe if you didn't experience it firsthand.
100%, 110% there indeed, brother. Of course, a company that you make your name with, and quite a legendary company in itself, is obviously TNA. An integral company as well, as alongside Ring of Honor. Want to know your thoughts on obviously beginning to start and join TNA at that time period. Did you feel like it was just the next evolution of your career?
It was just another opportunity, and it was a different opportunity, right? And so, you know, when I first went to TNA, there was no issue working for both companies. I was always very loyal to Ring of Honor. You know, it felt like my home. It was the place that gave me a huge opportunity. You know, I ran the school for some time. I lived 20 minutes from the office. I spent a lot of time in the office with Gabe and with the other, you know, people in the office. So I was very loyal to that company. And so when I went to TNA, it was just an opportunity to go there and do something in addition to it. Wasn't having to pick or choose. And then that shortly changed, right? And then it kind of became this, well, if you work here, you can't work here. And you know, like wrestling always does, becomes territorial. And, you know, they were trying to position themselves as, oh, like we're more like WWE. We're going to have pay-per-views. They obviously got a TV deal on, you know, on Spike, which, you know, we were doing $1 million every week, you know, on Spike TV, which that number now, you know, like, you know, I don't think anyone but WWE is hitting that number. So, so obviously it was opportunity for more money, opportunity for more exposure, opportunity to work with different people, and also a different style, you know? And so, you know, it's obviously, you know, it led to a lot of memorable moments and good years for me. Got to prove myself on a bigger stage, you know, something that wasn't just an indie as they tried to, you know, say Ring of Honor was. And, yeah, just kind of part of the growth process, you know.
Of course, absolutely. A good growth process with what TNA has achieved even to this very day. And obviously with TNA, like they would tour around obviously the American scene, but they would also do like UK tours. And I was always wondering, what was it like on those tours, and how was there quite a noticeable difference between UK and American wrestling audiences?
Oh, those are my favorite tours, man. They were the best. Yeah, you know, first of all, like I like different culture, and I like to travel, and I like to meet, you know, different people from different walks of life. I think that helps me as a human. And it's, you know, I always say the greatest thing that pro wrestling did for me was allowed me to travel the world and see things and meet people and talk to people I probably never would have. And it completely blew open my worldview and made me a different person in the process. But yeah, I mean, the fans over there they were electric because they didn't get this all the time, you know? So like, it was special for them, and they came out and they showed love and they showed support. And, you know, we were doing a lot of stuff in the Impact Zone. And so, you know, these people were a little spoiled because they got it all the time. And they didn't have, a lot of times they didn't have to even pay for it, right? They were just giving tickets away to fill up the Impact Zone. So, there was a bit of, it wasn't the same, right? And so you go over here to these UK tours, and this is maybe the once or twice a year that they're going to get to see all these TV stars, that they watch it on TV, but they never actually get to be up close and personal with. And so those tours are my absolute favorite. I wish we would have done more of them. Like I think we probably could have done more. We probably could have done 2 or 3 a year. And I don't think it would have been overkill because I think the support was that strong for us over there at that time.
Yeah, no, we really do love TNA because a lot of younger wrestlers I speak to, they idolize TNA and what it meant to them. A lot of women wrestlers want to become women wrestlers because of the knockouts. A lot of people want to become high flyers, like with yourself, the X division. Yeah. What do you think TNA's place is in with British wrestling culture, with how much it is loved? Do you think it's just because it was, able to come over a lot, just the stars? What is it about TNA you think has a correlation with British wrestling?
Well, I wonder, and it's a good question. I don't know if I know the answer, but I'll just throw out some hypothesis. Maybe one of it was WWE is like the big empire, which is kind of representation of USA, right? USA number one. And so TNA almost felt like more of like, this is ours, right? Like this is, I don't want to say secondary, but like, WWE is the big empire but TNA felt more like, hey, this is like for us, like this is more something we can actually hang on to and make ours, and we can meet these people, and they're more obtainable, and they're more approachable, and they're more of like an underdog, like what I'm saying. I think too, like for a lot of the British wrestlers, for any guy who's not 6'2", 225, and you're trying to figure out if you can make it in the business, and then you see the X division and you see a bunch of guys that are more my size and they're thriving and they're on TV and they're successful. Well, yeah, that's who I want to be. Like, there's my spot. There's my opportunity. A guy like Rockstar Spud, or a lot of these guys that, Noam Dar, a lot of these guys from that, it's like, oh, well, this is what they grew up watching and going, I can do that. And there's a spot for me there. Where if you're turning on WWE and all you're seeing is The Undertaker and Kane and these, larger than life physically superstars, and you're 5'9", you might not connect as much, right? And so you might gravitate towards more the thing that you have a connection to, that you can actually feel is something that you can do.
100% there, absolutely, and it does speak to that good correlation as well. Now, obviously, UK fans, we're a fun bunch, but a vocal bunch. We can be. So I want to know, is there any particular memory from the UK tour of a fan chant or fans interactions that you remember?
Oh man, not off the top of my head. Not in the UK. I had one in Australia, which isn't the UK, obviously. And it was probably my favorite chant ever. I wrestled Abyss in what was actually one of his last matches, if not his last match. And it was a Monsters Ball match. And this was for an independent company over there. So being a Monsters Balls match, you're going to see chairs or tables, or you're going to see weapons, thumbtacks. You're going to see something. And so me being the dastardly heel I am, every time that got teased in the match, I took it away. It never happened. And so people assumed at some point there's going to be the payoff, the barbed wire, something. And I ended up beating him with a roll-up. And no weapons were used the whole Monsters Ball match. So as you can imagine, the crowd was very upset at the end of that match. And before the match, I said, if I beat you, Abyss, you have to take off your mask, right? So now I got on the mic after the match and I started, rubbing it in, because I'm thinking, nobody thinks that if the stipulation is a Monsters Ball match and if Abyss loses, he has to take off his match. Nobody in that arena thought he was losing that match. Like, not one person thought he's going to lose the match. And so when it happened, it was almost like it was silence. It wasn't even like they booed. They were just kind of like in disbelief, like, what? So anyway, long story short, I tell him to take his mask off. fine, you're not gonna take your mask off. Take off your shirt. I want to really embarrass you. And so finally, he just punches me in the face. He sets the table up. He puts the thumbtacks on the table, and he choke slams me through the thumbtacks on the table. And the whole crowd chants, "You deserved it." and I laid there with a smile on my face, going, "Absolutely, I did." And those are the fun moments I love to create, being the heel, being the foil. The reason I work so hard to make people hate me so much was so I can give them those moments like that. Right? It was always about, at the end, it was always about giving them the joy, right? But sometimes I say it's like a catapult. You know, you got, the further you pull it down, when you let it go, the higher it can shoot. Right. So I wanted to do my best to really, really make you hate me, get under the skin, so that when it was time for me to get what I deserved, you know, people loved it. You know, as far as the UK, like, you know, a wanker. I mean, you know, I got called a wanker a time or two. You know, for sure. That's when I do recall. And probably some other things too. Yeah, but yeah, the wanker one was, I definitely got a wanker a few times chanted at me. Yeah.
We do love that chant for many reasons. Indeed, that's just us. But you do make moments, of course, Austin. And obviously, one big one, I think, a part of your TNA career is obviously the X Division and Option C. And the whole creation of that, obviously, you know, you were dressed as, you know, Suicide, and you won the title, and then you take the mask off. So I just love to know the correlation of those events, and obviously what your events obviously led to an integral part of the X Division history. So I'd love to know just the history of the whole Option C and wearing the Suicide suit.
Well, they'd come to me with the idea of, you know, we want to put you in a match against Bobby for the world title, and you know, have me relinquish the X Division title. And so my concern was, well, wait a second, like, you know, if I do that, aren't I just kind of saying, like, this title doesn't mean anything, or it's not important, right? And so I was just trying to think of something that would give it some input. Like, how do I salvage this so I'm not just like tossing this title away like it doesn't mean anything? And so I just had this idea of, like, well, what if we do it so, like, every year at you know, for me, it was supposed to be every year at Destination X, which was like the X Division Showcase pay-per-view. Well, what if every year, whoever the champion is when it's Destination X can also cash this in for a shot at the world title if they want? And it was just something I just kind of threw out there, as like, just to, you know, to give it something more than just, cool, yeah, I get a shot at the world title here, take this. And so, yeah, they liked it, and, you know, made a storyline around it, you know, and it's you know, it's kind of cool because, yeah, it's still talked about, and it was like one of those things, like, legitimate, was just me trying to brainstorm and come up with something to add more value, you know, and so it's, you know, and so it's still something that people, you know, kind of tie to me, which is cool. The whole Suicide thing was, you know, that was just a storyline. I think what some people are confused was, you know, I was only Suicide that night. I basically beat up TJP in the back, and I stole his Suicide costume. And I think this was like something that's been lost on people. Like, the story was lost. I wasn't Suicide. I beat up Suicide that night and stole his costume so that I could get my shot at the world title, right? So it was a one night only. And it was funny because when I walked out there, because I had to have different mannerisms, and I had, you know, I couldn't give it away. It was me. So the whole time I walked out there, I just pretended I was Loki, and I just tried to walk and act like Loki. Figured that'll throw everybody off. You know?
Hey, it's about those moments, of course, and obviously, big moment, obviously winning the world title. You know, that thing there in the back. Beautiful fucking belt, by the way, honestly. From being obviously a two-time Ring of Honor World Champion to then, you know, X Division Champion, the longest reigning to still to this very day, and then the world title being Bobby Roode. And like, I walked back the footage and just seeing that crowd reaction, holy shit, they were fully behind you. Do you think it's always important for when those big moments happen, obviously, is knowing when the crowd is right for that moment to give the belt to the next guy, and obviously reflecting on your win.
Yeah. And that's, that's really the job of the, the people in charge, right? Is to have their thumb on the pulse. I'll give you an example of, when Seth Rollins was in Ring of Honor as Tyler Black, they kind of missed the window when people were ready to see him be the guy, and they didn't pull the trigger, and his support kind of went like this, and then we had to do a little extra to get him back here before then he beat me for the title, right? To TNA's credit at the time, they felt like, hey, this guy's organically like really getting over with the crowd. And again, for me, I just was every week like, whatever you're going to have me do, I'm going to go out there and try to put on the best match on the show, right? I want to, and develop my character, but go out there. And I think that's what it was. Like, people just appreciate, like, oh, every time this guy walks out, like, we know he's going to work his ass off to give us the best match he can. And that's what I just always hung my hat on. And so, yeah, the office saw that and they said, hey, here's an opportunity to strike while the iron's hot, do something that nobody's really expecting, because it wasn't like I had this big, long build. And so I think that it created this, and I think the same thing with the Joe match, right? I think part of the reason why it worked was because it wasn't telegraphed ahead of time. A lot of times people know, like, again, Joe just won in the TNA World title. I think just about everyone knew going into this match, okay, they're gonna put the title on him, because they probably could have done it last time, but they wanted to give him the one more hurdle to get over. But I think everyone expected it. And had he had lost, I think people would have been shocked, right? Mm-hmm. So because of that, you don't have this like organic moment of like, holy shit, it happened, because there's an expectation it's going to happen. So I think with both of my title wins, or my first TNA title win and the Ring of Honor win, part of what worked was that people weren't expecting it, and it was a genuine shock, but they were also excited and happy that it happened at the same time.
Truly, absolutely. So that sudden aspect of it that really adds to wrestling matches, and that's why we love it indeed. Obviously, with TNA, it would continue as a product, but there were times where it'd have its dip, obviously being taken off Spike and just talent changing. I just want to know, obviously, because you would then go on to WWE, and just the TNA environment at that time, was it quite sad to just see what the company was becoming? Obviously, something that was so loved and passionate by fans, to the states of flux.
I just kind of become used to the ebbs and flows. And because, again, these are things that aren't in my control. And so for me to get too wrapped up in it doesn't really do any good. So, I'd been there through a handful of different regime changes, or who was the boss, or who was head of creative, or who was head of talent, or, who was running the show. That changed a few times while I was there. The television station, of course they're not going to say, hey, things are bad. They're going to sell it to you in the most positive ways they can. And so, yeah, we went from Spike to a secondary channel to another channel. I think that, it's important as talent is we worry about the things we can control, and I wasn't always successful at that. I'm a passionate guy. I wear my emotions on my sleeve, at least historically. And so that definitely worked against me at times. Because when all these things are happening, or you see things happening in the back that are undermining the talent or the opportunity, it's hard sometimes to just keep your head down and keep your mouth shut, and it's because you actually care, right? You're not just there to collect a paycheck. But at the end of the day, same thing that happened at Ring of Honor, right? I mean, we went through different, things there. We went, no TV deal, it was in the HD net, and then sold to Sinclair. So you just kind of learn that that's part of the gig. And if you're not being paid to worry about those things, then do your best not to worry about those things.
Fair words to live by indeed, Austin. Of course, joining WWE as well, quite a moment for you. Obviously, initially part of NXT, you would have an injury, then you were commentating on 205 Live, and lead into the feud with now Pac, formerly Neville.
Right.
Just reflecting on your feud with Pac over the Cruiserweight Championship, obviously as well getting a match on WrestleMania 33, which is quite amazing thing as well. Just reflecting back on that feud.
It's funny. I use this as an example of saying that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is the best thing that happens to you, and you just don't know it in the moment, right? And so when I had my orbital bone shattered in NXT, just at a house show, at the time you're not thinking, oh, this is great, right? But in a weird way, that indirectly led me to WrestleMania. I at no point while I was there was I ever told or did I ever feel like they had any plans for me, or I was earmarked for anything, or do your time here and then we're going to do this with you. Like, I felt like really from the time I stepped in there, I was on this like kind of like probation period where it was kind of like to see what this guy's about and test me and see how to react to different situations. So when I had the injury and I was going to be out of commission, I had just mentioned like, hey, I don't necessarily want to sit home for 3 to 6 months. So if there's something else I can do, commentary, managing, whatever, let me know. I'm interested. And so literally the day I got home after surgery, I got a call and said, hey, we're going to try you on commentary for this 205 Live thing that we're starting. So you fly out tomorrow. I was like, oh, okay. So here I went and thought I was going to have like a couple, my brain's going like, okay, well, I got a couple of months, few months. How am I going to come back? Maybe I'll wear a contact in the one eye, to sell the injury. I'm just trying to think like how I'm going to come back with some, different gimmick. Like literally I was on the road the next day. And so I knew at that time that this was a really important opportunity for me. I imagine that Vince didn't know who I was, and I'm not typically what he looks for in a WWE superstar between my age and my height, and so, but I do know that guys that have shown the ability to entertain him on the mic have been able to find their way into good spots. Mm-hmm. So that first night on commentary, I really knew like this is going to be kind of make or break for me. And if I can impress the old man, maybe I got a shot to do something here. And, luckily for me, that's what happened. Right after the first show, I went back to Gorilla and he was standing outside Gorilla and, big smile on his face and God damn it. That's the best debut anybody's had on commentary. And so the story I've heard is that leading up to that, the idea was to do like a multi-man cruiserweight or 205 Live match at WrestleMania. They were going to do some like, 6 or 8 man multi-man match. And after my commentary, he decided to switch course and he decided he wanted me versus Neville. And things switched and I found myself in WrestleMania 33 simply because of my commentary, right? Which I never would have done had I not had the injury. So it's how this world works. And if you believe the universe is looking out for you, then you take everything that happens to you in stride and you're not always given the blueprint and the map. You just trust that whatever's happening to you now, even if it's something bad, is leading you in the right direction.
You never know where the world's going to take you with one simple act. It just, Jesus, that's the world. Yeah. And I've only attended one WrestleMania, which was WrestleMania 39 in LA, but the environment of just like the atmosphere, it's something you can't really describe. So for yourself, actually wrestling on a WrestleMania, that's got to be out of body, right? You can't describe it, right?
It's difficult because, here you would love nothing more than to just be focused on whatever you're doing on the show, right? I got this match. Here's where I want my focus to be. There's so much going on in the lead up to that weekend. You want to have your family and friends want to be there. So you're trying to arrange, tickets and travel and this for, 5-10 people. And then you want to make sure that you got a couple of nice new suits because you got the Hall of Fame and then you got the red carpet and then you got to do a bunch of press and you got to do right. So, I mean, there's, I want to make sure I got the right gear. I want to get special gear. Well, everyone's trying to get special gear. So you got to make sure, right. there's like so many things leading up to it. By the time you walk out the curtain, you're just kind of like, thank God, you know, like now I can just do what I love to do, which is this part, you know, all the other stuff, like it comes with the package. But yeah, man, it's intense. It's an intense week, not just for the performers, but for all the people backstage, the production people, the seamstress, the PR guys, the people setting up the venue, the cater. I mean, it's a lot. And when you see it from beginning to end, and what a huge production it is, and all the hands that have a part in it, you really appreciate how special it is that they're able to create this, and just how many people it takes to put that show on, right? And so, you know, in some ways we get to do the easy part, which is just performing, because we all love to do it. Everything else leading up to that, just to make that possible, it's a lot, and a lot of hands go into it, and you really appreciate it once you're a part of it, for sure.
Of course, it's an atmosphere like anything ever, and truly you have to truly experience it.
Yeah, man, it's like the Super Bowl, it's the World Series, it's like it's everything rolled into one, right? And so, you know, and that's why, yeah, why not make it a 2-day event? It takes so much to set it up. Why not get 2 days out of it? You know, I'm not hating. You know,
more of it
that goes in. You know, yeah, why not?
Why not, indeed. Obviously, departing WWE, but after that, you really hit the ground running with the belt collector gimmick. Just holy shit! I would imagine your airport fees would have been out the fucking skyrocket with how much you've had to carry on the suitcases.
Well, I never checked those bags because you can't check the titles. So I had to carry it on. And luckily, they don't usually weigh your carry-on bag. I did have one situation where I was taking a small plane that my carry-on wouldn't fit over the seat. So like, well, sir, we're going to have to check your bag. And I was like, yeah, I can't do that. I can't let this bag out of my sight. Well, why not? And so I explained to him, and I showed him, I was like, listen, I can't even risk anything happens to these. And so luckily for me, the seat next to me was open on the flight. And so for takeoff and landing, they had me put my bag and seatbelt my bag in the chair. So I took a picture of me and my belt bag sitting on our flight together, you know. This is the only way that we travel, you know. So but yeah, it just, you know, listen, and this happens for a lot of talent. You leave WWE and you're the flavor of the month, and everybody wants you on their show because you're coming right off of TV. And so, yeah, and for these other companies, it's going to behoove them to maybe put their title on you, to bring some eyeballs onto their product. And so it just kind of happened organically. And after like the second one, you know, then I was doing some stuff in the UK with a couple of promotions in England. And they actually had to take the title off the guy that they had it, because he was going off to Japan. And I was like, well, hey, like, you know, I've got a couple already. Like, we could kind of turn this into an angle if you're interested. I'm already coming back. And so, yeah, we did like this little invasion angle between the two companies. And so then also now I had 4, you know, and it was like, oh, now it's like a thing. And then when, you know, then TNA called to bring me back, and they said their idea was to put the title on me straight away. And I'm like, well, man, that's going to really make this kind of a thing, because now I have like a major title. And so, you know, it just kind of happened organically. And I think too, like, you know, I haven't really talked about this a lot, but that time period for me personally was like really, really difficult. You know, getting fired basically from WWE, that coupled with some things happened in my personal life at the same time. And my life just kind of blew up all at once, and everything that had been working towards. And so I didn't really deal with it. What I did is I just submerged myself in wrestling. And luckily for me, everybody wanted me. So I think 2018, I think I did something like 250,000 miles in the air that year, because I was just, every weekend I was somewhere. And so instead of dealing with my emotions and the things I was going through, I submersed myself in wrestling and some drugs and some alcohol. And that's how I didn't deal with things for a number of years. And it was a roller coaster, man. And, you know, from the outside looking in, people don't see it because you didn't fall off a cliff. The perception is you're successful, you have all these titles, you're making money, you're everywhere wrestling, everything's fine. But personally, man, I was struggling, and it was a number of years I struggled, you know, leading up to even, you know, Bound for Glory and that aftermath, and really until I finally just kind of walked away from wrestling for a while to kind of figure some things out. So, but yeah, you know, a lot of people have this idea that somehow I made it a requirement that, you know, well, I'll wrestle for you, but you got to put your title on me. And, you know, I hate to kill people's perception of the evil Austin Aries, but that wasn't the case. It happened organically, and I just ran with it, you know. And I will say what I got out of it more than anything else was probably the coolest 8x10 promo picture I have. By far, every show I'm at, every signing I do, that's the picture everybody wants. They want the you know, ultimate drag, you know, they want the belt picture, man. That's the one they want, right? So, hey, that's cool.
Hey, it's a fabulous 8x10, and obviously so many belts you had from the Impact World Championship, the Defy World Championship, WSW, Impact Grand, IPW World, Defiant, and so many great belts. Is there one of them that's based on design that you just really liked that, you know, you look back on?
Yeah. They were all, you know, I think the cool thing about them is they all look different. And a lot of times you can kind of like, the belts can kind of all look the same because they're getting from the same makers. I think the cool thing is, and if you look at the picture, each one has their own style and none of them look like the other ones. I will say, and this goes back to something I was talking about earlier, my favorite time in wrestling of my career was that stretch. And it was every match I lost the title. In every place when I lost that title, it was epic. Like, it really was. And it was some of my favorite matches and moments. You know, the World Series title, the one in Australia. When I lost that title, man, the place, I mean, they were so happy. Like, it was like a legitimate, like, and it's like I created that. Like, I made them so angry at me, right, that they were so ready for me to lose it. And so when I did to Robbie Eagles, the place exploded. Again, same the Defy one with Swerve Strickland. You know, like we swerved him in the match when I won it. For a moment, they thought he had just beat me for the Impact World title, and we totally did a swerve to where basically the first ref got knocked down, right? The first ref get knocked down. Swerve ends up hitting me with his finish. Second ref comes in, counts 1, 2, 3, and I'd made it an Impact World title match. And now the crowd thinks he just won the Impact World title at the Defy show. Like, people are like shaking their body, like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. So now the first ref gets up and he goes, no. I'm disqualifying Swerve. He hit me. Even though it was inadvertent, he hit the referee, disqualification. So now the crowd, who was just up here excited, now they're mad because now Swerve, and this is his house. I mean, these are his people. So now they're upset. So now, being the good guy that I am, I grab the mic. I go, wait a second. I didn't travel all the way here to have that kind of finish to the match. So if it's okay with all you people and it's okay with you, Swerve, I say we start this match right now until we get a winner fair and square. And now the crowd's like, yeah, Austin Aries is such a great man, right? So the ref agrees. He rings the bell. I hand him the mic to go put the mic away. As soon as he turns his back, I quick kick Swerve right in the balls. The ref turns around. I pull him in. I hit him with a brain buster. 1, 2, 3. And now I'm the new champion. And now the crowd is irate. Like, you take them, and this is what pro wrestling is, man. And this is the magic of it, right? It's taking them on the emotional roller coaster. So you take him from here to, oh my God, he won the title. So then you pull him down here. Oh, he got disqualified. That sucks. Then you bring him back up here. Oh my God, Austin Aries is such a good guy. He's restarting the match. And then you fuck him. And so because of that, when we came back for the rematch, they were hot. They were angry and they were hot. And so for the finish of that match, I realized halfway through the match that this guy was going to beat me, but if I got disqualified, I would keep the title. So I grabbed the same referee that was in the last match, who had a little bit of heat himself. They were angry at him. And I said, I'm going to hit you and you're going to disqualify me. And so I basically did, and he didn't, and it got rolled up, and then I hit him and I told him to disqualify me. And he gave me the old Steve Austin double fingers. And then I went to brainbuster the ref, but instead Swerve gave me the low blow and he gave me the brainbuster, and then he beat me in the crowd, so for me, this was the fun. I don't like when people are, it's weird. Like, I don't need or like to be the guy that everyone's cheering for. Mm-hmm. Like, my ego doesn't need that. It makes me a little uncomfortable. I'm a little socially awkward. I've always found it easier to be the guy that gets under your skin so that I can give you the joy, and the joy doesn't have to be me being the guy. The joy for me is in making that guy, and it can be whoever it is. If I make you angry enough, you'll pay to see anybody beat me, as long as somebody does. And so my favorite part of the whole belt collector thing was each and every one of those matches where I dropped the title. Those are some of my favorite matches in my career. And having like the one thing in WWE is you don't really, not everyone gets creative freedom, right? You have writing teams, and you don't maybe get the artistic freedom you had when you're doing it other places. So all of a sudden I had complete artistic freedom again when all these promotions, and I got to weave all these cool stories and then give the crowd something at the end that made them happy, because you always want the crowd to go home happy. Yeah.
It's always going to make them happy. And whether it's from win or losses, they'll have a reaction. And obviously, a match that gained a lot of reaction is obviously Bound for Glory 2018.
Oh, yeah.
You and at the time, obviously, Johnny Impact, now Johnny TV with AEW and Ring of Honor. There's a lot of weird narratives about, obviously, the match. Obviously going into business for himself, this wasn't right, or people are hitting this and this. It's all backstage politicking. Why do you think that this match in particular, and obviously the events after it, have such a muddy narrative around it online in wrestling communities?
Well, so we talked about earlier, right? Like, wrestling fans want to believe they're smart to the business, and they know the inner workings, and they know what's going on. And so when you're able to use that knowledge they think they have and actually use that to work them, to create something they believe is real, because, well, I know how it really works, and you just use that to create something that they believe. Originally, and I'm obviously, like, here's the funny thing. If the finish of the match hadn't happened the way it did, would anyone still be talking about that match? Would people if you said, hey, do you remember Bound for Glory? Like, nobody would know, right? Like, and that in and of itself, in a nutshell, was the purpose. Now, the where it falls off the rails was there was no payoff, right? There was no payoff. And it's funny because I just pulled up the text messages today between me and Johnny back and forth after our match. Right, him thinking, oh, like, me telling him happy holidays, and I think I heard you're coming back. We're gonna do this rematch, and basically, like, I was offered a contract after Bound for Glory because my contract was up, and again, as I kind of alluded to a little earlier, I was kind of dealing with some personal things, going through my own issues, and at the time, I decided to pass on the contract. I didn't want to re-sign there long term. For the what they were offering, but I still wanted to do the rematch, and still was willing to do a per show agreement to finish the storyline. And they just decided they wanted to go a different direction altogether. That if I wasn't going to be under contract, they didn't want to work with me. So this leads the perception that, oh, he did this and he never came back, so it was real. I mean, it wasn't. What I've come to realize is, it doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter if I produce, text message threads and emails. People nowadays, they're going to believe whatever they want to believe, and any evidence or anything to the contrary, they'll just dismiss. And so I do say this, right? If you understand television, then you would know that the people that needed to know that that was happening after the match knew that was happening after the match. Because you had 3 camera angles of me flipping off Don Callis, walking to the back with my fingers in the air. And then as soon as I got through the curtain, there was a camera literally waiting for me, which you see on their behind the scenes documentary. And if I was really going into business for myself, they had the opportunity to just cut the camera tight to John and never even show me again. And nobody would have known that any of that happened unless you were in the building that night. But nobody watching, there would be no footage of it. There'd be no video of it. And that's what happens if they don't want you to see something on TV, they just don't show you. They just cut the camera and you never see it. And so, listen, I have some regret. My regret is that we didn't give him a payoff, right? Because it wasn't about stealing John's moment. It was about prolonging this feud we created, thinking we can get one more out of this and we can really give him his moment, right? Originally, the title was supposed to stay on me. This was what I was told. They called and told me, hey, we're going to keep the title on you through the summer and then set me up, I think, to drop it to Sami Callihan or someone that they had in mind. And I actually said, well, why wouldn't you put it on John? Like, they're looking, it's like he's coming off Survivor. The guy looks like $1 million. They're trying to get a TV deal. I was like, you can always, if you want me to be the guy to drop it to the next guy, you can always put it back on me and then we can build to me and Sammy, right? But why not? Like, if I were you, I would put it on him. Like, he's the guy I want on the poster. If I'm trying to pitch my TV show my wrestling show to a bunch of television executives, I don't want to show him Austin Aries as my world champion. I want to show him John Morris as my world champion. If they don't know anything about wrestling and they're just going by a visual and like, that's the guy I want on my poster. That was my thought, right? So I pitched it, but they said, no, we're going to keep it on you. But then like a week or so, maybe 2 weeks before Bound for Glory, I found out that now they were going to switch it. We had already done TVs to lead up to the match. So we had already filmed all the TVs leading up to the match. And so you go into these TVs with the idea that this is the end of the movie. So then we structure the story for the end of the movie. So then you do the scenes for the movie, but then you find out they're going to change the end scene and switch it around. So my original thought is going into this match is if I'm going to retain the title, my job is to go have an awesome match with this dude, make him look as good as I can before I beat him. And we just have to go out and have a kick-ass, Meltzer special, 5 stars, right? That's our job, okay? However, if we're switching the title to John, now my goal isn't to have a great match. It's to create a moment. It's to create something people will remember, okay? So the goal switched from me being the winner to him being the winner. The goal of the match in my mind switches. It's not about now me just having a great match and making this guy look good. It's about, man, we got to like create a moment for this guy that people are going to talk about and they're going to remember. So that was the thought process in the finish. Everyone thought we had legitimate heat. Everyone thought we really hated each other. Everyone thought that, I really upset Taya for what I tweeted about her. I hate to even have to expose it. Like, no, we were all in on it. Like it wasn't, there was never any heat. That like, there's text from John going, man, all the knockouts are blowing Taya's phone up right now. Like they're so angry at what you said. And we're just like playing it off. Right. Like it was a work, man, but everyone believed it. And so if you go back and watch that match, I structured that match to make it feel like 2 guys who didn't want to be in there. The first half of the match, we were just scrapping and let's just go out there and just make it feel real. Like we really hate each other. But the whole idea was, man, we got really people believing this. So because we rushed this title switch, let's create a moment that people are going to talk about. Let's create a buzz so that when we come back with this rematch, everyone's watching, and then we really give you your moment. Now we really crown you as the dude, right? That was the mindset behind it. It didn't work out that way, right? And in a lot of ways, it has tarnished my career. A lot of people think a lot of terrible things about me, you know, based off of internet rumor or what they think happened or what they've read happened. You know, my story's been consistent from day one because it's the truth. It's, you know, it's at least my perception of how things went down. But again, perception's reality. So if the reality is Austin Aries was mad because he was going to lose the title, then that's what people are going to believe, right? I've realized I can't spend the rest of my life or the rest of my career trying to correct everybody that's wrong or try to make people believe something that they don't want to believe. If you already decided Austin Aries is a terrible human being and he's unprofessional and he's a prick and he's all these things, there's nothing I'm going to say that's going to change your mind. You know, you're going to believe what you want to believe. You know, but it is what it is. And in a weird way, it's like one of my proudest like artistic moments, because in a day and age where everyone says you can't work people anymore, like, well, you can, you know, including the people in the back, because there's some of the biggest marks are in the back, you know? And so, I mean, I remember that whole day, I just carried an uncomfortable energy because I knew there's a lot of moles in the back that feed info to the dirt sheets, right? It's how they get an extra half a star rating on their match ratings, is they're the intel. And so I knew that I had to carry the facade on the whole day. Like I couldn't just do it like when the match started. So like even talking the match out with John, I was like animated and I throw my hands up and I put my finger in his face. And so anyone who wasn't within earshot like thought like that, these guys really hate each other. It's like, yeah, I'm working, man. I'm at work. This is the art of the work. And to me, the magic of pro wrestling isn't that we lie to you and insult your intelligence and we tell you that it's real. It's that the magic is you don't know what parts are real and what parts aren't. That's to me, and that's what I think is being lost in wrestling now. We're constantly reminding everybody while the show is going on, just remember, this isn't real. That's the magic of pro wrestling. The magic of pro wrestling is, I want you to think I'm a terrible human being. Except for now I realize, oh shit, in this day and age, all that does is get you canceled. There is no real heat anymore, because if you really upset somebody, they just cancel you. So they have to be in on it, right? You know, people say, oh, MJF is such a good heel. It's like, but if you're acknowledging he's a good heel, then you don't really dislike him. Then is he really a heel? Right? But that's where wrestling is now. It's changed. I get it. It's 25 years since I started doing this. Culture's changed. Pro wrestling's changed. We can argue if it's for the better or for the worse, but I understand it's different. And, you know, I was reluctant to accept that change. And in some ways, that's played into this perception that I'm this awful human being that's unprofessional and has done all these dastardly things. Because for a long time, I wanted you to believe that, because I thought that was the art of what I did, make you really hate me. Fortunately, it didn't quite work out that way.
IWC, you have your fucking answer, so shut the fuck up. The answer is there in the proof, but perception is what they'll believe. But I think that's the thing about Bound for Glory. Like when you type in the match on Google, it's you and Morrison are like the top 10 searches, just your match in general. Like it's the memorable moment of that show. So it did its job in being memorable.
So my thoughts on this are two, folks. I went back and actually watched some of the match. I'm like, man, you know what does suck was that was a kick-ass match. Like it felt raw and authentic, and it felt like these guys really didn't like each other, and they really like, and that almost gets lost because of the 10 seconds after the match. But it's funny because I'm like, well, what if I would have just laid there for like 3 or 4 more seconds? But then I don't think anyone's talking. I don't think anyone talks about it. Right? It's like you have to like step on the line, right? And if I would have laid there and sold more, then nobody would have been outraged. And if nobody's outraged, no one talks about it. right? And so, but that was the one thing that also, like, you know, when talking with Don and Scott at the time, it was like, guys, like, this has over 1 million views this week. Like, when's the last time we've done anything in this company that's got 1 million views? How many people didn't even know that John Morrison was still wrestling because they didn't even know that TNA existed? Like, part of that was to say, hey, if we can create this buzz, we're going to get a lot of eyes on the product that maybe didn't even know it existed. And now, whether I come back or not, your job is to convert some of those eyes into fans, to have them keep coming back. Like, if it's my parting gift to you, I'll take the heat and I'll be the bad guy. But there's a million plus people that now are watching, even if it's just this clip, that might now tune in to see what you guys are doing.
Yeah.
Because like there was so much talent there that, like, yeah, like, you guys deserve a bigger audience. Like, you deserve to have more eyes on what you're doing, right? So how do we do that? How do we get that? Well, sometimes, you know, you have to be controversial, right? Like, again, if people weren't outraged, nobody would have picked up that match. No one would have cared. If Dave Meltzer would have rated that a 4.5-star match, John Morrison, Austin Aries had a 4.5-star match, you think anyone would have cared to go watch it? People don't remember good matches. They don't. Like, there's a catalog of 4- and 5-star matches now. How big is the catalog? Right? It's huge. They remember moments. And I was just trying to create a moment that people would talk about and would create a buzz. No more, no less. It didn't play out the way that I wanted it. It didn't, you know, we didn't get the payoff. And because of that, perception is he went into business for himself. Well, what business did I get out of it? Like, well, you know, like, there was no business, right? Nobody got, like, so anyway. But the funny thing is like, supposedly now PCO just, you know, did this thing, and no one's calling to cancel this dude and be like, oh, he's unprofessional, he should never wrestle again, right? Like, where's the energy for that? And I'm not saying he should or shouldn't. I don't know if it's a work. Maybe it's a work. Maybe it's not for real. I love it. Like, play along, have fun with it. Stop trying to like feel like you have to figure everything out and know the truth. Sometimes the intrigue is like in not knowing, right? Like, I think that's like some of the magic that's lost in wrestling is everyone needs an answer for everything that happens immediately. And you know, we can go back to my whole banana gimmick when I was in WWE, like wearing the banana in my suit coat and eating the banana. People would always ask me, well, why the banana? Exactly. Well, what do you mean? Like, that's the point is there's no point. The point is now I have you asking a question and you're intrigued and now you want to know why the banana. The minute I tell you why, now you don't care anymore. But as long as I never give you the answer why, you're always going to wonder why. And I think sometimes that intrigue is good. We need some of that. We need some randomness. We don't need the answer to the equation at the end of every show or at the end of every pay-per-view. Sometimes we can just leave people hanging, you know, and because that intrigue is what keeps it fresh, you know, so it's not so sterile all the time.
Yeah, of course. You know, it's the moments of wrestling people remember, and sometimes it can just be wacky fun or the seriousness that we take serious. It's wrestling at the end of the day. It's very
at the end of the day, man. None of this is that serious. Wrestling, life. And that's one thing I learned, that, you know, stepping away from wrestling and doing my own like soul searching and going on my own personal journey to figure out who Daniel was, not the Austin Aries character, but who I was, is what I really took away from that was that none of this is that serious.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we make it way too serious and we give it way too much meaning and it destroys us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we worry about things like my legacy, you know, or my rep. It's like, listen, man, guess what? In 80 years, everybody you know or knows of you is going to be dead. In 200 years from now, no one's going to talk about you. No one's going to watch your footage. No one's going to remember you. This whole landscape is going to be different. So, you know, let's not take anything too seriously. And I know for me, old Austin Aries, early in his career, firmly in that ego and took everything very seriously, you know, and it definitely, you know, it definitely did me a disservice at certain points in my career to just take everything a little bit too seriously. Yeah.
Sometimes we just got to enjoy the moment, you know, you don't know what tomorrow could bring. Could be a good day, could be a bad day.
Could be the last day.
Exactly. But you've done other great things. Obviously, one of these obviously is the food fight book that you've published as well.
Oh yeah, yeah, man.
What was the passion behind that?
For me, it was just learning about the food system. Look at that, just happened right there. There you go. When I went plant-based about 25 years ago, so I stopped eating animals, and part of the reason was it didn't feel right to me, right? Like, I never enjoyed fishing, I never enjoyed hunting, I don't enjoy hurting things, causing pain, killing things. It doesn't work for me. And so I realized I was paying other people to do things to animals that I wouldn't be able to do myself. And why was a pig any different than a dog? Or why was a cow any different than a cat? And, when I actually started to think about these things, the way I was brought up or what was normal, when I really started thinking about it, like, I was like, oh, it's a learned behavior because it doesn't really resonate with me. So basically, making that decision, I had to just kind of educate myself about, well, if I'm not going to eat these things, what am I going to eat? And so it got me down the rabbit hole of our food system. And, what I learned was this whole system is set up to make people sick. Because unfortunately, especially in the United States with allopathic medicine, the money is in sickness. The money there's no money in prevention. There's no money in curing. There's only money in treating, right? So you need sick people to treat to make money. If I prevent you from being sick, you're not my customer. If I cure you from being sick, I lost a customer. So the idea is I get you sick as quickly as possible, and then I treat you your whole life, so I have a customer for life. And one of the ways that that's done is through the food system, right? And so as I kept peeling back more and more, I started realizing, like, oh, wow, like, this whole system is set up for failure for people, right? They're poisoning us. They're allowing things in the food that are toxic, that are drivers of disease. Big story here in the U.S. is they banned red number 3, dye number 3. It's like, well, yeah, this has been linked to cancer for 30 years. They're just getting around to it now, right? So anyway, doing that, and then this idea that you need to eat meat for protein, you need to eat animals to have muscle, right? So I just, after doing it for a number of years, the opportunity to write a book was presented to me where I could just kind of tell my story and then also kind of shoot down all these things that people say that aren't true. I was a high-level professional athlete now going for 25 years. Like, I'm not the biggest I've ever been, but I'm still in shape. I was able to compete at a high level. I didn't have to do it by eating animals. I almost 47 now. I feel like I'm still looking pretty good for my age. I'm still moving around good. So it was really just about, hey, let me tell my story and let me just put some of this information in a book form for people that are interested, that maybe like me, like what their current diet is, doesn't resonate with them. They say they love animals, but yet at the same time, what they really mean is I love cats and dogs. The rest of them, like, here, like Thanksgiving, right? We stuff bread in a turkey's ass and we eat it and we give thanks, like, it befuddles me. So that's really what it was about. It was just about, my whole thing is like, pro wrestling is a cool platform. It's a cool vehicle. But ultimately what we're really doing with pro wrestling is we're just helping distract you. And that's my job, right? You ever heard the old saying, give them the bread in the circus and they'll never revolt, right? And I'm the circus. So my job has been to distract you so you don't think about your problems or you forget about your problems. And that's okay. But I'm far more interested in using the platform to help people solve their problems, make their life better, right? Like, when you turn the show off or when you leave the show, can you take something with you that makes life better on Monday morning? So that's really, like, right now, like, why I still wrestle while I'm still doing this is I'm trying to use the platform for that. How can I? Yeah, I'll lure you in with the distraction, but then while I got you here, do you want to talk about food? Do you want to talk about meditation? You want to talk about breath work? You want to talk about natural sunlight? You want to talk about your health? You want to talk about your mental health, right? Like maybe I can offer you something that makes your life a little better so that you're not constantly trying to distract yourself with entertainment.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
That's it. And, you know, it's a great book. Obviously, it's on your Pro Wrestling Tees store. And I implore people, give it a check out. Looks like a great book. Get a copy.
Yep, I'll have copies with me when I come across the pond here in March. I'll be in the UK. I'll be in England for about 12 days. I got about 5 shows lined up. So,
I may not like England as a Scotsman, but I'll happily travel down to meet the great Austin Aries.
Yeah, man, I'd love to see you there. Yeah,
be a pleasure, my friend. Also, we're coming to the end of our time here, and it's been a great chat to have you here on the Soul Session. So 2 final questions before we wrap up.
Yeah.
One, obviously, is TNA right now is a new era. It's with its partnership with WWE.
Yeah.
What do you think that could mean for the future of TNA? Do you think, like, and the business as a whole, do you think it'll be a great partnership with just the eyes on product and in wrestling as a whole?
Yeah, well, you know, I think that at this point, TNA understands and WWE understands they don't really have competition, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, WWE as an entity is so large and so further ahead. They don't really have competition, and it's certainly TNA. You know, again, when I was there early in the 2000s, they were trying to position themselves as competition. You know, when they had Hogan there and Bischoff. But so once you realize we're not competition, we're not competing with these guys, well, why not work together, right? WWE's not worried that they're going to give, you know, so much publicity to TNA that TNA is going to overtake them in their business. It's not going to happen. TNA's not worried about competing with WWE. So, like, why not work together? Because they can both offer something to the other company that they can use, right? For TNA, you know, they can now. I mean, when's the last time that WWE people were tweeting about a TNA event or a pay-per-view? I mean, it hasn't happened, right? So it's going to put more eyes on that product. For WWE, for a lot of their talent, they've got a lot of talent and they only have so much television time, right? And also, there's something to be said for going outside of your system and outside of your bubble to continue to grow as a performer, right? So most people that come through the Performance Center, they're going to be taught kind of the same formula in the same way. And it's always good as a performer to add more depth, to be able to go to a different system, to work with different talent that have been taught a different way and do it that way too, so that you grow as a performer. So now you have perspectives from 2 different places. So for WWE, it's going to give them an opportunity for their talent that maybe aren't getting the reps that they need, that can step out and learn to work in front of a different crowd that maybe has a different expectation, without the safety net that they have in NXT. They're going to be able to go out and do that. And for TNA, it's just a partnership that's going to help continue to get eyes on their product. And that for their talents that at some point priced themselves out or have done everything they can do at TNA, it's going to kind of have that doorway into the next step for a lot of these talents. You know, a lot of people are speculating that some of the people finishing up their contract now could be heading to WWE. So now there's a pathway there, and they're working together, and so it's going to give an opportunity for talents to do that as well. So I don't really see any downside. You know, I think as wrestling fans, that the tribalism doesn't really help anybody out. You know, and especially from a talent standpoint, I've always said, like, you know, working together to bake a bigger pie for everyone to eat off of is a lot better than fighting over the crumbs.
Yeah.
You know, and so here's an opportunity to just, you know, bake a bigger pie so that everyone gets a little better slice.
Great analogy indeed, Austin. Truly a good analogy on that one. Now, obviously, 2025, this is a fresh new year, and I would just love to know, for a final wrap-up, your main plans and goals for this year.
Oh, man. Yeah, so I got these 2 tours coming up. I'll be heading to Australia February. I'll be heading to the UK in March for about 2 weeks each stop. And then after that, I don't really know, man. Right now, my plan is to go back to India for a while and explore some outside wrestling things that I enjoy to do. I'm not sure what my wrestling career has in front of it, to be honest. You know, there's days I wake up and I'm really motivated to have that one last run, or, you know, try to go somewhere of substance and do some things. And then there's a lot of days I wake up and I'm just kind of over it. You know, I've done it. There's a level of toxicity now that comes my way from certain pockets of the pro wrestling community that, you know, I don't know if it serves me. And so sometimes I feel like I'm better off just exploring, you know, there's other things that I'm interested in, you know, because at a certain point, physically, this window is going to close, and I don't want to be some guy that's hanging on just to hang on. My ego doesn't need the adulation or the spotlight. So like, that's not an issue for me. But I do still like to entertain people, and if I can help them in the process and I can offer something that's going to help their life better, then that appeals to me too. So yeah, I don't really know. You know, I'm not actively trying to go anywhere and get signed. Conversely, I'm not opposed to having conversations if there's levels of interest anywhere. You know, I had some conversations, brief conversations with TNA in the last, you know, 3-4 months, you know, about the door being open. Just, it's about a timing thing. You know, so we'll see what the future holds. You know, I will say I'm just, you know, keep myself in shape, keep myself ready, and looking forward. Like, I enjoy doing these shows I'm doing. I enjoy making my own schedule. I enjoy going and working hard for a few weeks and then disappear for a few months and go to some other country and just enjoy life, man.
Yeah, you got to enjoy it. And I think no matter what you do, Austin, most wrestling fans will always think of you as the best man that ever lived.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah.
No worries, my friend. Well, Austin Aries, thank you for appearing here on the Soul Session. And of course, folks, if you love what you've heard of Austin, his Instagram will be down below. You can click it, follow, see his journey as well. Remember, his Food Fight book is on the Pro Wrestling Tea store. Get yourself a copy. Looks like a great read. Well, of course, folks, as the Scottish always do, finish up your pints, put your chairs away, and thank you for tuning in for another episode of the Soul Sessions.
Now